Hello, hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is your girl Mitzi, and this is Mitzi. Let's think about it. Today, we are thinking about the evolution of a baby boomer. Yes, that is the topic of today. And thank you so much, Joyce, for coming on to my show and sharing your thoughts. And I am ready to just rip off that band-aid and dive right in. And let's see what you think about when you hear those words, the evolution of a baby boomer. What does that make you think about, Joyce?
I turned 75 in February. So, um, in that time, I started out as a wild and crazy hippie chick. And my mother said that I was I forget exactly what her word, but basically a spark plug, a wildfire from the moment I was born. And so I sort of ran through childhood like a little tornado, and then kind of became a juvenile delinquent in my 30s and started
Mhm.
misbehaving and acting out. And I've had a big, huge, full life. I've done a million things that a lot of people have on their list of something they'd like to do someday. And I've done a ton of it. Like I owned my own business. So from 1973 to 83, I owned a store. It was a record store, which was also a head shop. I don't know if you know what that is, but it's where people buy bongs and
Oh,
yeah, so I sold bongs from 73 to 83. And then I was a singer in a band for 5 years. And my band had a video on MTV to a song I wrote. You know, a lot of people say, oh man, I wish I could be in a rock band. My band opened up for the Go-Go's. We opened up for Meatloaf. Um, you know,
wow.
so I've had all these exciting adventures. Um, some people, their life goal is they want to marry and have a family. I married my college sweetheart. We had two beautiful kids. And then 10 years into the marriage, I got, curious and I wanted to experience being with other men. So I gave him an ultimatum and said I wanted to date, so we could either have me move out and date or we could try an open marriage. He agreed to the open marriage. So I think they call it polyamory today, but
Yeah.
back in the 70s, we called it an open marriage. And so I started dating, and then I met this younger guy, and I thought he was so hot. I wanted him to be around all the time. So I moved him into our house for the last 6 years of the marriage. And, ultimately, um, that decision transitioned me to the next part of my life, which is it turned out that the guy who agreed to move in with some lady and her husband and the two kids was an alcoholic. Big shock, right?
Yeah.
And so behind his alcoholism, I became really nuts. I wasn't used to somebody who didn't follow through and was unreliable and was having car accidents and punching holes in the wall of our house and, punching out his windshield and just all this craziness that comes with alcoholism. I didn't really have any exposure to alcoholism growing up. I was very fortunate. I had two very stable parents. My dad was in the military. I lived all over the world. I lived in Japan when I was 5 years old. I lived in Germany from fifth grade to eighth grade. My mom's Japanese Hawaiian, so she was from a huge family in Hawaii. My
Yeah.
dad, she was from a huge Mormon family. My dad was from a huge Catholic family. And they both abandoned their religions in order to get together. So I didn't grow up in a religious household, but I did grow up in stability. My folks were
Yeah.
together 52 years when my dad passed. So my crazy behavior did not come from them. Do you know?
Yeah, yeah. That was a choice. You just wanted to explore. You just wanted to be adventurous. You
Yep,
just wanted to know, and you allowed yourself to explore. You allowed yourself to wander. You allowed yourself to go into the what ifs of the unknown of life,
yep,
and you'll figure it out as you go. And it sounds like you lived a very fulfilled life that if you were to, God forbid, die tomorrow, you would die happy knowing that you did everything that you've ever wanted to do, that you
right.
lived your life 10 times over. And I
And
think
guess
that's
what?
the go
That's just
ahead.
the first half. That's just the first half. So all of that happened. And along the way, I became a marijuana addict and an alcoholic because you can't be in all that craziness and not be part of the whole party scene. So at that head shop, I would, bring booze to work with me.
Yeah.
And I would
Yeah.
drink while I was working. So I would decide ahead of time what I wanted to drink during my shift. And I would be, drinking screwdrivers or beer or gin and tonic while I sold you your Led Zeppelin album or, your Roach clip.
Yeah.
And so, and or I'd get stoned while I was working. We had this rack of incense and I would take incense and go to the back and, in the bathroom and burn a stick of incense and get high in the middle of my shift. And I was in Indianapolis, Indiana. And I don't know if you know anything about Indiana, but it's like really conservative. People don't really act like this. They weren't acting like this. I was making all of this up by myself. Um, so at the end of the day, at
Yeah.
40 years old, I found myself divorced. And now the boyfriend is, he's, you know, pretty much out of the picture. So I'm alone and I'm deciding I'm moving from Indiana to California to pursue my dreams because
Yeah.
my bachelor's was in theater, my master's was in radio and television, and I had done some commercials and I'd been in some plays and I, shot this music video with my band, et cetera, et cetera. But I wanted to come out to LA and pursue acting, full time. And I was 40. I was 40 years old. And my children announced that they weren't coming with me. And that was a huge trauma and a big turning point in my life because they were 13 and 16-year-old girls and they were not moving with their mom. They were going to stay in Goober, Indiana, instead of come out with me to groovy California. I, I was devastated. And
Yeah.
so when I came to California, I got sober. And so the second half of my life began because sober Joyce doesn't behave the way loaded Joyce did.
Yeah, yeah, I love your story because it just shows really how much you changed, how much you evolved, and how much you lived through. And let's be honest, in the 70s and 80s, that was a whole different time frame where
Right.
drinking and smoking and partying and swinging and having those open marriages, that was a different time. You know what I mean? And I'm not saying it doesn't happen now because people still drink, people still smoke, people still have open relationships, people still have all these swinging parties still. Like nothing really has changed. It's just about like the media. How much is it actually going out into the world? You know what I mean? Back
Got it.
then,
Yeah, we
they
didn't
didn't
have
have that
computers.
technology. No, you had the mail and word of mouth. So whoever was coming to smoke with you and drink with you and hang out with you and do these wild parties with you, it was all word of mouth. And house parties were a whole different avenue versus what they are now. You know what I mean? House parties were real house parties back then. You used to really dance. You guys used to really smoke. You guys used to really drink. You know what I mean? Have a good time in a different way. You know what I mean? The cocaine was different back then. You know what I mean? Like so many different things were back then versus what it is now. But it just shows like if your mind is just open into just leaning on what you want, then you can see it through. You know, you can see it in your
Well,
life.
and the thing is, once I was out here and I was getting sober, it's like, okay, now what are you going to do for a living? right?
Yeah.
And we had closed our record store for the previous 5 years before I left Indiana, and I had been teaching college. So I was a college instructor for 5 years for I think maybe five different universities. There was one that I
Wow.
taught every year, and then all these others would hire me for a semester or so. And so I thought, oh, I'll be a teacher. So I came out here and I had my teaching credential that I had kept from back in the 70s. I had always kept it current, but I had never been a full time teacher in my life. And so I went in sobriety. I was told that I should suit up and show up and see whatever God put in front of me. And so I went back to school. I got a special ed credential and I spent 23 years teaching special education.
Wow.
That's a whole different life than working in a head shop and singing in a band. Do you know what I mean? So that's the evolution. And over time, my first 8 years, I pretty much didn't date at all in my first 8 years of living in LA. So I went from marrying the first guy I ever slept with and then having that boyfriend. So always, always, always being with a guy to like, no, you're not dating. It was very traumatic, but the universe had other plans for me. And then over time, I met and married the guy I'm married to today. And he and I just returned from a 3 week trip. We went to, he had a conference in Belgium. So we
Nice.
went to Brussels, we went to Athens, we went to an island called Paros in Greece, we went to Antiparos. We went to Antiparos and spent the day touring an olive grove and doing olive oil tasting. You know how people go and visit vineyards and do wine tasting? So sober people do other things. You know what I'm saying? We were doing olive oil tasting.
Oh,
And
I
then
love
we
that.
went to Croatia
Mhm.
and spent, time in this area called Split and another several days in an area called Dubrovnik where they shot Game of Thrones. And then we went back to Brussels and he went to his conference. And
Wow, that
and
is
over
beautiful.
yeah, and over the trip we celebrated his birthday. He is 6 years my junior. No, 12 years, my junior. So he just turned 63 while we were traveling. He also turned 37 years sober while we were
Mm.
traveling. So he is sober longer than I. If I don't drink or get high between now and August 20th, I will turn 35 years sober. He's 37 years sober and he had his sober birthday. We were able to go to recovery meetings live in Greece, live in Brussels, on Zoom in Croatia, and then we celebrated our 26th anniversary while we were in Croatia. And he is such a romantic that he had researched and he found this place called the Love Memories Museum. He said,
Oh,
let's do that on our anniversary. So that's what we did. We went to the Love Memories Museum.
that is so amazing. But it just shows and it gives hope for those people who are thinking about stepping into sobriety and not sure of how they can really live their life sober and
Yes.
then realize like you can still live a life. You know what I mean? There's a way to still enjoy life without having to be high all the time or having to drink all the time. You know what I mean? Or
Yep.
being in a state of mind where you're not technically present. You know what I mean? Because
Exactly.
if you think about it when you're drinking and when you're high, whatever your drug of choice is, you're not really present. You know what I mean? You're
I love the
just
way you put that.
existing. Yeah, exactly. You're just existing and your body's there, but your mind is somewhere else. You know what I mean? Your heart
Yeah,
is somewhere else. So it's just like when you're
100%.
able to have sobriety, especially for that long. And I love the fact that you were like their sobriety birthday and we celebrate his sobriety birthday. I love that because that is another way of birth. You know what I mean? That is a
Yes,
way of just coming
the
out into the
rebirth.
world. Yes, a rebirth. That's the right word. It's a
Yeah.
it's a rebirth that people don't really talk about. And I respect people people who have this sobriety and they put their boundaries down and they just say no. And I and I also love what you said, if I don't smoke or drink come September. You know what I mean? I respect it. I respect it because some people don't realize like it could be a possibility. The
I live
temptation's
in
always
California.
there.
Where are
Exactly. And
you?
I'm in Wisconsin, but being in California alone, I mean, you're exposed to everything that's kind of legalized, and drugs is available
Right.
for
There's a pot
everybody.
store on every corner.
Exactly, exactly. So it's just like it makes it available. I mean, over here in Wisconsin, there is a bar in every corner. There's a liquor store in every block.
It's
You know what I mean?
my first time getting high was in Minong, Wisconsin.
Stop.
I was a camp counselor, and all the kids brought weed to camp. But it was another counselor who got me loaded. She asked me to come into town with her. So we go into this little town and sit on the benches at a baseball diamond, and she, whips out this joint and I smoke it. And I said, I'll try it, but I don't think I'm going to like it because I've tried repeatedly to smoke cigarettes and I just can't get the hang of it. I don't
Yeah.
like smoking. I just was in love. It was love at first
It's
toke.
different. I'm telling you, it's a whole different experience. Like
Yes.
cigarettes, it's like I don't know. I don't get it either. I don't get the point. If anything, it burns my throat. It's
Yeah.
not for me. I know
Yeah.
exactly what you mean. But when you smoke weed, it's a whole different avenue. It's a whole different experience. And it's a whole different, like, I don't know how to explain it. Like, you have
Oh,
to
yeah.
have done it to have known it, to know what we're talking about. So
I
I
thought I
know what
would
you
do it to the day I died. From that moment, I thought, oh, now this is a good time. I will be on my rocking chair on my porch smoking till the day I die. And then over the years getting sober, I went to a recovery meeting for marijuana addicts. In my
mean.
first year of sobriety, somebody took me to one of those meetings, and I heard the very first speaker at an MA meeting, Marijuana Anonymous, and he said he had instructed his family that when he died, they were to roll a big fat spliff and stick it between his dead fingers. And he was supposed to go to his grave with a joint. And I thought, okay, that guy's a bigger addict than me.
Oh my goodness, I love that. I know because
Amazing.
we never know. We never know. And
Right. And here he
sometimes
was sitting in front of me sober.
yeah, yeah, it's a
Went
whole
from
different
that.
thing. Yeah, it's a whole different thing. Like people don't realize. And I love your story because it just shows you're only 75. Oh my goodness, you're still so young. You're still so young because I've met people like I was a CNA just out of high school and I worked with people who were like over 100 years old. You know what I mean? They're
Wow.
101, 102, 99, 98, still
Amazing.
sharp, still attentive, cognitive is
Right.
right there. You know what I mean? So it's just like when I see people like in their 50s and they're ready to like, I'm done, I'm old, no more life to live. Like, no, there's so much more life to live. You're halfway there. Like, no. And then to
Right.
hear your story, like I've traveled, I lived, I've enjoyed life. I cried. I was angry. You felt all of your emotions. You've
Yes.
experienced so much. You've dabbled on different avenues. You were in art, you were in singing, you were in teaching,
Well,
you were in
and guess
special
what?
ed. Go
I'm
ahead.
still doing it. I mean,
Exactly.
here's the thing. My relationship with my kids in sobriety has been healed. So when I was 3 years sober, my youngest daughter came out here to live. So she went to high school in California. And then she went back to the Midwest for college just because she thought my grandparents are getting elderly. I don't want to miss their final years. And so she went back there. And then after she graduated, and when her sister graduated from college, she too moved out here. So suddenly I had both my daughters living out here. When my parents got elderly and frail, I moved them out here. They bought a
Mm,
condo in the same building my husband and I live in. My brother moved out here. He was a part owner in that record store, and so he when we closed our store, he went to work for one of the record labels, and he had a long, distinguished career as an executive for a record company, and he moved out here. So I eventually had my whole family out here, and then my sister passed away back in the Midwest. I became the conservator for her daughter who has special needs,
Mm.
and she's out here. I'm her conservator to this day. So, and when my sister died, I found a journal she had written, and it was talking about what an awful sister I was, and, how much I tortured her, and on and on. And I've been able to make living amends to her memory by taking responsibility for her daughter, who's a handful, frankly. I just this morning was doing paperwork for her. She's 50, like 54 years old, developmentally about 12, and she can just be a big pain in the neck.
Oh,
So,
yeah. No,
but
I know what you mean though, because my great grandmother, she had about like 8 kids, 7 or 8 kids, and one of her kids were just mentally delayed. And when my great grandmother died, she was she was technically saying was still living with her, and then somebody else of the family, the siblings, had to come and care for her and until she passed.
responsibility.
But she ended up passing a little bit after her mom died, just because it took a toll on her, you know what I mean? Like, she was always with her mother was always taking care of her. Like, my great grandmother, like, she lived into like her late 90s. Like, she was a very sharp woman. So to know that, like, you can still be so sharp and do so much in your life. I mean, your story alone is a testimony, and anybody who's listening can just be inspired to know that you can change your ways, you can change the way you think, you can change the way you act, you can change the way you move, you can mend relationships, you can fix ties that you didn't even realize were broken or were breaking. You can make relationships better by just clearing up your mind and letting go of old thoughts, old habits, old things that no longer serve you in this season of your life. You know what I mean? And recognize that when
Evolution.
you exactly, it's part of the evolution of your life, of Joyce's life. This is your evolution. You know what I mean? That's your testimony. And I'm so glad that you shared it with me because, man, just listening to it just makes me realize, like, wow, we can truly do anything that our minds allows us to do.
Well,
That if
check
we are,
let's see. You won't
huh?
believe this. You will not believe what is going on right now. So I am in a play that has been running for 23 weeks. And the play opened here in North Hollywood on February 15th. And it's a play called Bill W. and Dr. Bob. It's about the founders of Alcoholics Anonymous. And
Oh,
I play Dr. Bob's wife, a character named Ann Smith. And she and Bill W.'s wife were the founders of the group called Al Anon, which is for Friends and Family of Alcoholics. And so art is imitating life in this bizarre way at this moment in my life. I did this same play 2 years ago, and we ran for 17 weeks. And then 2 years later, the director brought the play back, and brought me back to play my role again. And so I've been able to perform this show for 20 out of the 23 weeks because I did take 3 weeks off to go to Europe, right? So I had an understudy who filled in. But my daughter and her husband from Australia, my youngest daughter has been living in Australia for the last 11 years.
oh,
And they came and they saw my show. My daughter, who lives here in California, came to the show. My brother came from Indiana to see the show. My granddaughter, who is 12, just came to see the show 2 weeks ago. She's
oh.
never seen me act. She's seen videos, but she had never seen me on a stage acting. And she doesn't really understand. She said to my husband in the middle of the play, "What's the difference between being a drunk and being drunk?" Isn't that a great,
That's a valid question. You
is
know what
that
I mean?
great?
Yeah, I mean that's a valid question. That's a real
for a kid?
question that yeah, for a kid. I mean that's the way that she's thinking already is absolutely amazing. Like kudos to her for her to
Right?
just think that to try to differentiate the two
Yeah.
because people don't realize the
Yeah. What's
difference
a
or
drunk?
they
What is a
yeah,
drunk? If you're
yeah, like
12 years old, you
yeah,
call
that's
that person a
amazing.
drunk. That person called himself a drunk, but then he also talked about being drunk. What's the difference? She's
Yeah.
asking.
Yeah, that's
So
valid. That's
cool.
a real thing. I love that. I mean,
Isn't that
you are
amazing though?
you're sparking thoughts, you're sparking possibilities. You allow people to realize anything is possible in your life as long as you take that step, as long as
Right?
it's what you want. Because it sounds like everything that happened or everything that you wanted, it happened because you wanted it. You didn't see a no because you made it possible. And oh my goodness, Joyce, time is catching up to us.
Well,
And
yes.
it's sad because it's like I can keep talking to you and I can just listen to your stories every day. I love people like you who just know how to just share their life and
Well,
share
I
their
do have a
stories.
book. I wrote a book called Evolution of a Baby Boomer, Life Beyond Sex, Drugs, and Rock and Roll. And
Yes.
it's everywhere. It's on Amazon. And here's the thing. The way I wrote the book is I wrote, this happened. I wrote a song about it. Here are some of the lyrics. And then in the audio book, I say, this happened. I wrote a song about it, and a recording of my band playing the song comes in. And so I narrate the book, and my band recording the music is there. And being in that band was very exciting because our guitar player was Meryl Streep's brother-in-law, still is. So she came to one of our shows once, and
Oh.
when I first moved out to California, she and her husband had a house out here. And so the brother came out and I got invited to dinner. So I had dinner at Meryl Streep's house.
Oh, awesome. Oh my
It's
goodness.
very
So
cool.
I know that time is catching up to us. So what can
Yes.
be some lasting words that you can leave us off with to keep on thinking?
Well, it is never too late. It's a big, beautiful world out there. And if you see something out there that you want to experience, get off your duff and go do it. I have had that philosophy my entire life, and I have no regrets. Like you said, if I were to die tomorrow, there is not a list of unfinished business waiting for me to get to. Because, my husband got that conference in Belgium, and I said, let's go some places we've never been. So we
Yeah.
went to Belgium, we went to Greece, we went to Croatia, and everywhere we went, people were so loving and accepting. And, you know, I had to
Hey.
apologize for the chaos in America, but, you know, so be it.
It is, yeah, it is what it is. It's okay. But that is amazing because it does give people hope. Like whatever that you're looking at, whatever that your situation is being right now at this moment, it doesn't define you. It doesn't entrap you and it
Doesn't limit
doesn't
you.
exactly that's was the next one. It does not limit you. And I think that's the beauty of life is that it allows us to keep going. Just we just have to keep going as well with it. We just have
Keep
to continue
evolving.
to yes, keep evolving. That's the word of the day. Evolve, ladies and gentlemen. So, with that being said, go check out Joyce. I have access to her website that has access to all her great content, that has access to her book, so
Yes.
that you can continue on thinking. So, with
Thank
that being
you.
said, bye.
Bye, Mitzi. Thanks for having me.